Welcome to the Mom Self-Care Podcast, your safe space to finally focus on YOU. I'm Chari Twitty-Hawkins, your self-care coach for moms, praying wife, and mom of four. And I know that being a Christ-centered mom is such a beautiful calling, but it can be so draining. That's why it's important to make sure you are filling your own cup. On this podcast, we'll discuss practical, holistic self-care strategies to help nurture your mind, body, and spirit. Because a mama who fills her own cup pours that back into her family with true peace and joy. Tune in for honest conversations about motherhood and self-care because you matter too. Hello. Thank you guys so much for joining me for the first episode of season 2. We are in season 2, y'all, of the Mom Self-Care Podcast. I am Chari Twitty-Hawkins, your host and self-care coach for moms, and I'm so excited that you are here. And for you guys that are watching on YouTube, yes, I have my new hair. Yes, it's all purpley. I love it. Y'all know, if y'all been following me for a while, y'all know that that is my favorite color. So guys, starting with this season, October is Emotional Intelligence Awareness Month. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that today because I feel that's so important. And emotional intelligence is knowing how to manage and control your emotions in a healthy way and also acknowledge the emotions of others. And this is so important for us as moms because guess what? The way that we react to things, the way that we express our emotions, guess who's learning from that? Our children. So if you are getting angry and frustrated and yelling, guess what they're going to learn? That's what they're going to learn. And some of your children are going to think, oh, that's okay. So when I raise my children, I'm going to do the same thing. Or if you become sad and feeling resentment and all of these things and you hold it in, then guess what they're going to learn? They're going to learn that's what I'm supposed to do. That's what I'm supposed to do. So it's important for us as moms and also to help us not discipline our children out of anger. Yes, when they do things, you get angry, but you also want to be, like I said, about emotional intelligence. You want to be able to say, okay, ooh, I'm too angry right now. I need to step away. I need to take some time. And then I'll come back and discipline my child as I see fit, not just out of pure anger, if that makes sense. And when we're more emotionally intelligent, then we're able to know when we feel that stress coming on. We're able to know that, okay, I need to set a boundary here because I'm feeling used. I'm feeling disrespected. I'm feeling unappreciated. So when you're aware of those feelings and you're instead of ignoring them, like a lot of us do, like I say, a lot of moms push those feelings down or push them back and like, oh, I can't worry about that. I have to show up as a mom. I have to do what I have to do. Yes, you do, but you also have to take care of yourself too. So when you're aware of, I'm going to start feeling sad if I start watching this or listening to this, or my child has done this. Okay, I know those feelings. I've talked about before how we hold feelings in our body, how you can feel it. When you start to feel that, you're like, oh, wait, I need to take a step back. I need to close my mouth. Jesus, take the wheel. Those are some of the wonderful ways that you can be proactive about saying, okay, this is why I need to be in touch with my emotions. This is self-care. Self-care is not just bubble baths and massages, though those are awesome forms of physical self-care. Self-care is holistic. It's knowing yourself within as well. For instance, a few days ago, my son, now we know our children, they all have issues. And I know that my youngest son and my oldest son, they can act like best friends. They can also be like worst enemies. So this particular day, I was trying to tell my oldest, look, you need to learn how to ignore him. You need to focus on what you're supposed to be doing right now. And as I was telling him this, he was trying to close a lid on a container that was sitting on the table. Now, mind you, on the other end of the table, I had a champagne glass and it was filled with cranberry juice. And so I'm telling him, okay, you need to relax, calm down. And he starts hitting, y'all, he's like, bam, bam. And before I felt, like I talked about, I felt that anger coming up. But before I could say anything to him, guess what happens to my glass? It topples onto the floor. And remember how I talked about our kids are always watching us. He looks at me wide eyed. My daughter is standing off to the side. She freezes and she looks at me. I grab my hands. I clasp them together in front of my chest. talking about being emotionally aware, being self-aware. I brought it back down because y'all know I wanted to yell. Y'all know I did. And I said, you need to go get the mop and mop that up. You're probably going to need to mop it at least twice. And I stayed, my posture was the same with my hands right in front of my chest until he walked off and went in the closet to get the mop. And then I was just like, I just let it out. And I was like, Lord Jesus. And that all included me, of course, being aware of my own emotions, as well as I know they are just scared. And I know, of course, he didn't do that on purpose, though he was doing something, being super dramatic, because that's how kids are. That's how we all can be. But just that's an example, just like within the last week where I was like, and I had to bring it down. So think about, just like I said, within the last week or maybe the last 2 weeks, what is something that happened and it just took you from here to like 100? And you get to choose how you react to that. If you're aware of your feelings, if you're able to say, hey, oh, I know I am, I need to do something. My thing was to, and we all have different things, was like I said, my physical things was to clasp my hands together. And I kind of pressed my arms against my chest. I think I was, it's funny, but it's not funny, holding myself back, because that would have took me to another level of anger. And he didn't need to get yelled at more because he was already angry about his little brother. Think about yourself as an adult. If you're already angry, if your husband had made you mad, and then somebody else, maybe your boss, gets angry at you and starts yelling at you, is that going to help? Are you really going to be listening? No, I doubt it. So just think about that. That's something that helps me with emotional intelligence as well. Like I talked about, the second half of it is knowing others' emotions. So if you know that your husband is already angry, your kids are already angry, if you're aware of this, but you have to focus on being aware, then you can react in a different way. Something that they told us, and this probably applies to a child who doesn't have ADHD, but they're like, if you have a child that has ADHD and they're having a spell or whatever, they're yelling, they're doing something you don't like, let them have that. Or set a boundary, tell them that is not acceptable, but don't sit there at that moment and try to rationalize with them. Because in that moment, their emotions are high. Their emotions are high. So either you let them have that time or you set a boundary, like I talked about. Okay, you need to go take some time to yourself, or you're not going to be yelling at me. And then later you sit and you talk with them. Okay, you're not going to be yelling at me because that is disrespectful. It makes me feel really sad. And this, again, those emotions, this means, mamas, being honest, not just saying angry, but I feel disrespected. It hurt my feelings. If I tell my children, when you yelled at me, I felt disrespectful, I see something in their face that is like, oh crap, I didn't even think about that. Or if I say it hurt my feelings, then it's like, and I know all kids aren't like that. But when you're able to, I wish I had an example, but you guys should go online and look up, I believe it's called an emotions wheel. Just look it up. If you look up emotions wheel, that I'm sure it'll come up, but it's a wheel and it has all these different words for emotions. And then when you see something, like you may see anger, and then there's a lot of other words that are connected to it. And when you're able to use those words, you can, and this is a way for you to teach your children, use the correct words. When my child says, oh, I'm dumb, I'm stupid, I say, no, you're not. Let's use the correct words. How do you feel? Because you're very smart, you're very intelligent. But how do you feel because you didn't pass that test, or that person decided they didn't want to be your friend? How do you feel? And then we can go from there. That's something we can do with our children, you can do with your kids, and then you can apply it to yourself. So yeah, look up that Look up emotions will. And I'm sure, I think it's another word in between. I just can't think of right now. You know, I'm going to blame it on mom brain. But I encourage you to do that because a lot of times we're saying, okay, mom's not angry. She's overwhelmed. She's this, she's that. I'm like, both can be true. Mom is angry because she's overwhelmed, because she's resentful, because she feels disrespected, because she's sad, because she's sad. When I coach my clients, I ask them, you know, if you say you're angry, what is under that? What is causing that anger? Is it because you're sad? If you're sad, what's making you sad? Why does that make you sad? And then going from there. That's why it's so important to be intelligent about your emotions and embracing them and nurturing them instead of saying, oh, I don't have time for that. That's not important. My emotions don't matter. They very much so matter. They matter because you are a child of God and He wants you to be happy. He wants you to embrace all of your emotions, the happy ones, the good ones, and the bad ones. So let's start instead of pretending your emotions don't exist, instead of thinking, oh, I'm just angry all the time. Why? Why are you angry? So that's something to really ask yourself. So here are a few ways to start being intentional about your emotional intelligence. Number one is to start to check in with yourself. This can be at the beginning of the day or the end of the day. And ask yourself, how am I feeling? How am I feeling? And I encourage you to write it down. And this is great because you can come back and say, okay, I overcame that. Or, okay, I'm still struggling with this. What do I need to do next? So if you're waking up and you're feeling like dreadful, or if you're feeling happy and grateful, write that down. Or at the end of the day, if you're like, oh my goodness, I've been feeling really sad today. Why have I been feeling sad? Or I've been feeling jealous. Like I say, be vulnerable, be just tell it like it is. I've been feeling jealous because I've been looking at somebody on social media and their life looks so perfect. And then this is when I will remind you that social media is people's highlights, even the bad ones, they're highlights. You do not know the whole story. And next is, as I mentioned before, being intentional about regulating your emotions. So starting to say, okay, I know this is a stressful situation. How am I going to handle it? And then if you need to, like I did, if you, I know it's not funny, but I can't help but giggle. You know how you can laugh at something afterwards, but in the moment it was not funny because it was not funny. But if you have to clasp those hands together and breathe, then do that. If you have to take some time and go pray, then do that. Do whatever it is you need to do. If you have to say, okay, let me go step in this bathroom and I'm going to breathe in and out, in and out until I have calmed down, until my heartbeat has slowed down, then do that. But decide whatever that is for you. And then communicate your feelings. Like I said, go and look up that emotions wheel so that you can be more in tune to understanding what these words mean. If you see something, you're like, that's like, because some of the wheels, it's like it starts with anger. And so that it's like maybe a dark red. And then other things that relate to it, it starts to get a lighter red like that. And so if you see some of those words and you're like, what does that mean? Look it up, Google it and look it up so that you can start using those words so that you can start communicating and encourage your kids to do the same. Let's not be that generation of teaching our kids. I'm always talking about moms matter, but our kids matter too. Their emotions matter. So let's not raise them in that be quiet, stop all that crying. Your emotions don't matter type of motherhood. Let's not do that. Let's not carry that on. And some of y'all know what I'm talking about because I grew up holding my feelings in. And then when I got married, my husband wanted me to be all girly, girly. And I was like, okay. So next thing I know, I'm just crying just a lot. I'm crying a lot because when I was growing up, I didn't deal with my emotions. I held them in. I had to be hard. I was Miss Independent. I couldn't be seen as weak. So we want to make sure we're not raising our next generation to be like that. So ask your children how they feel. And if they say, I don't know, something I've been taught in coaching is if somebody answers, I don't know, then you ask them, if you did know, what would the answer be? So try that, and they might still be like, I don't know. But again, we know with parenting is trial and error. So you try, if it works, then great. If it doesn't, you try something different. Or you can give them words to try out. Like I said, have them look at the emotions wheel. So make sure, like I say, I'm telling y'all moms matter because you absolutely do. Your emotions matter. So do your children's emotions. And again, this is so important because you want to model to your children how to handle their emotions in a healthy way. You don't want them growing up and trying to figure it out on their own. And yes, this takes intentional work. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. But you're worth it, and your family is worth it. Your legacy is worth it. And I know this may sound foreign, especially like I said, if you were like me and maybe you grew up and you had to hold it in. But when you know better, you do better. Right? So you can't say you don't know better after listening to this podcast episode. So that's what I want to share with you guys. Just the importance of emotional intelligence as moms is so important. You need to put in the work. You're worth it. Your legacy is worth it. So this week, I encourage you to take one of those strategies and apply it to your life. Just try one at a time. And as I often say, make sure you save this episode and come back and listen again and take notes. Take notes of what you should be doing to be intentional about your emotional intelligence and your emotional health. God has given us the tools to make sure that we are able to do this in a healthy way. And when you do this, guess what you're doing? You're honoring your God given temple. You're honoring your temple by taking care of yourself from the inside out. All right, mamas. Well, thank you so much for joining me for the first episode of season 2 of the Mom Self Care Podcast. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and share with the mama you love. Until next time, take care. God bless. Thanks so much for joining me for the Mom Self Care Podcast. I hope you feel inspired to make yourself a priority too. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Share this podcast with another mama you love and leave a review. Also, feel free to let me know what you would like to hear about in future episodes by visiting me on Instagram at CIC Inspire Me. Until next time, take some time to take care of YOU because you matter too.